The communists call it haves and have-nots. And they say that all the history is economics and it is class struggle. And therefore class struggle is the fundamental principle of communism. When people say, no, concern for poverty is communism, no, that concern everybody has. The difference between communist ideology and any other ideology is the commitment to class struggle coupled with class annihilation. That is, the have-nots must annihilate the haves. That's the fundamental principle of communism. And the haves are those who have money, have wealth, and the have-nots who have nothing but their labor. That's the Marxian principle. Now, how do you apply that in India? Because, strictly speaking, the acharyas of our country are also have-nots. They don't have any wealth. In our society, Brahmins are generally poor, but they are highly respected. How do you create a class struggle between a Brahmin and a Shudra? Because it's not the haves and have-nots. The Shudra is the have. The Brahmin has nothing except knowledge. It's not material. So the class struggle doesn't apply to Hindu society or the Vedic society. Because how do you define classes in India? So you can only speak in terms of creating animosity between the Varnas, but that is a concept alien to Vedic society. There was never, harmony was the fundamental principle. That's why I talk about consensus. It is the later principle, later development, when the Brahmins began advocating freedom from the British. The Brahmins were in the forefront of preparing soldiers and fighters against Islamic invasion, that they became the target. And they became the easy target because they had nothing. So the class struggle doesn't apply to Vedic society in its original form. So what is the fundamental principle by which the Hindu society or the Vedic society operates? The closest Western concept I have seen is something we call as Pareto optimality, where we seek changes where no one is worse off and some are better off. That is a concept of Pareto optimality, which is how the Vedic society is structured. So therefore, we have traditionally created the concept of trusteeship, which Mahatma Gandhi advocated very strongly. We have put it in terms of how the society creates a consensus in the distribution of all power and making of decisions. And it is this fundamental principle, this is the strategy which Vedic society has. It works through consensus, and it seeks to see that the growth or the change is such that no one is worse off, even if some become better off. And that requires a non-conflict society, because jealousy is a factor which can drive any society to extremes. I was very surprised when the Communist Party of China 2 years ago adopted a resolution that China needs now a harmonious society. And the then President of China, Hu Jintao, while addressing the Communist Party general body, said that our economic reform has created a wide gulf between urban areas and rural areas. And this has led to jealousies and therefore potential for conflict. And then he invoked the Buddhist principle, where he said ownership of wealth is not important, which is actually our Vedic concept translated in different terminology in Buddhism. And therefore, Communist Party formally adopted the harmonious society concept, and then after that they lifted the ban on Buddhist conferences. And today China is reasonable to acknowledge that you are a Buddhist or a Confucianist. Because Confucius also says more or less the same thing. There's a famous story of how Confucius came with very old clothes to a wedding of a noble person, and the guards turned him away. So he went back home and put on his finest clothes and came back, and the guard saluted him and led him inside. And when the time came to eat food, he started feeding his clothes into the food. And people said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, you didn't invite me, you invited my clothes. So therefore I'm feeding my clothes." That's what Confucius said. So therefore there is this is the Buddhist, Hindu, all these are very essentially come from the core of Vedic society. And it is that which is extremely important. Now we come to the question that if you are making economic policies for accelerating the growth of India, what is the most important element that needs to be focused on? Gone are the days when economists thought that more capital and more labor produces economic growth. We now know it is not more capital, more labor, but it is newer innovations that make the difference, that change the productivity of capital to a higher level and of labor to a higher level. So, industrial revolution would never have taken place had locomotives not been invented, and the Bessemer steel blast furnace had not been invented. Later on, other innovations came, the jet engine, the fax machines, and the latest one which has led to complete revolution and therefore globalization of our globe, and that is the internet. These are innovations. As time passes, more and more innovations come. And it is this where I think the Vedic society is most equipped, because of the intellectual traditions that we incorporated into our society. And therefore, we have to go back into the Vedas, the Upanishads in particular, and even parts of the Gita, to understand what is intelligence. Because it is intelligence, the human intelligence, that produces the innovation. And that intelligence must not only produce the innovation, but it must also make him conscious of his duty to society, to see that he doesn't destroy society by his innovations. And today, out of the Vedic literature, United States, particularly Harvard University Department of Education, has constructed 7 different dimensions of intelligence. The first dimension, which today in India is all that we teach, is what we call as cognitive intelligence. Learning physics, mathematics, management science, etc. These are cognitive sciences. And they are studying of natural phenomenon, studying of logic, etc. But there are other dimensions of intelligence which are equally important for building of a stable, mature society. One of the second dimension of intelligence which is now being propagated and taught, which we knew for a long time, is something called emotional intelligence. How to speak in a non-confrontationist language, to speak in such a way that you win over people to your point of view rather than antagonize them. And that quality has to be tempered with other dimensions of intelligence, otherwise it's a dangerous quality. Hitler had that quality. He spoke and people got convinced. And they got convinced of the wrong thing. So emotional intelligence, the capacity to be able to present your point of view in such a manner that the person who is either new or is opposed to your idea suddenly finds the necessity to think about it and perhaps come over to us. When Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya engaged in Shastratas around the country, where he argued with Buddhist scholars, Mimamsa school scholars, and converted them